Today, we're breaking down the latest offseason in our Packers series here on Pastors Game 2 and previewing what's coming in season number 3 after an injury-prone start to our second season that had us 2-6. We found our way to the mountaintop and won our very first Super Bowl under coach Reggie White Jr. Welcome back to the franchise, everyone. We're glad you're here and tuning in, and we are ready to get this party started, ready to get the dynasty underway. Can this team go back to back? That is the big question that we have, and that is what we are ready to get started with in this offseason. So yesterday we streamed the entire offseason, so this video is going to be a short review, a short synopsis of that. If you'd like to see the full thing, we'll post the link on the screen here in just a minute, and we'll put the link in the description so that you can go and click on that so that you can see all the things I was thinking about as we were going through the process. Last year, we sported a high-flying offense with Jordan Love and Christian Watson leading the way. The league is on notice now that the Packers, that we want to go deep with the ball, which puts a lot of pressure on their secondary. I think that means that we're going to see a lot of more blitz packages coming our way to try to make the ball come out shorter and quicker. We started to see a lot of that in the Super Bowl and in the game before that with the Dallas Cowboys, where we weren't having enough time to throw the ball deep to Christian Watson like we were before. I think that's going to be the strategy that we are up against as we continue into this season, which means we have to shore up our offensive line. So right now, the offensive line is one of the weakest parts of the team. We've got good players at most of the position, but there's absolutely no depth, as we didn't return or re-sign very many of our depth players, and we're missing the right tackle position pretty much altogether. So we've got to make some moves to try to solve that problem, especially since the injury bug seems to run amok on our team. Adding more depth to the offensive line will also help the Rookie of the Year Deion Poole, the running back, continue his progression. Deion was our second-round pick in last year's draft and has already graduated to a Superstar X Factor status as well for this season. So while we've been going up and down the field with the pass game, Deion Poole has also played very well in the running back position. He'll be an important piece to this season's aspirations as we try to go back-to-back for the Super Bowls. Now, on the defensive side, we started to see some of the potential we've been waiting to see play out toward the end of the season. We've been drafting and developing speedy linebackers and man coverage corners so that we can pretty much make our opponents play a very short pass game. They favor that anyway, but if we can get them to be in second and long or third and long, then that is ideal for us. Last year's draft picks, Dom Robertson and Zach Bell, have turned out to be great additions to an above average secondary and a speedy linebacker group. We aren't looking for any big additions in any of those areas as far as the cornerbacks and the linebackers, but there may be some position changes that we make in order to make room for some of these younger players. We've got a lot of young players in these different linebacker positions, and there may be some better spaces that we need to do. In fact, we may even have to trade away some players in order for these younger players to get their chance to get in and develop. We're definitely thinking about moving Zach Bell to the defensive line, and Devontae Wyatt showed us that he could play at defensive tackle with Kenny Clark out for much of the playoff run, which means we could be moving Kenny Clark or Grover Stewart in order to make room for Devontae Wyatt to play at DT. In the secondary, we like what we have in Jair Alexander and Dom Robertson. Even last year's third pick, Deacon Bates, has come on. In fact, we learned that Deacon Bates is a Superstar X Factor, and he's actually been playing well. We hadn't been playing him since the beginning of the season, and we started to put him in toward the end, and he's playing well. And so that leaves Eric Stokes with a big question mark over his helmet. Is there going to be room for his talent on this team? And what about our safety play as well? Last year we struggled with a lot of run support and coverage for the tight end coming from our safeties. I think we'd like to see an upgrade in both of those safety positions as well. So to recap, we need to shore up on our offensive line in this offseason. We will probably reposition some players on the defensive line and maybe trade away some players to make room for some of the younger players to have time to develop. And we plan to upgrade our safeties in this offseason. So here's a quick look at the salary cap situation going into free agency. We have $49 million to spend. We needed to restructure a lot of contracts to get there, which may come back to bite us next year. But I think we had $6 million to spend this year, and we wanted to be able to give ourselves some room. We've got some really big contracts out there with Jordan Love, Rashawn Gary, and Jair Alexander carrying massive contracts, over $300 million between just those three, and each of them have huge penalties if we drop or trade them. Other players as well, not just those three, have got some big contracts and penalties and they're all up and down the roster. Elgin, I think that's his name. Jenkins is one of those players. Huge contract, big penalties. Kenny Clark's one of those players. Grover Stewart. They're all players with big contracts, and there's a few more. The contract situation is not ideal. So still, with all of that, we decided to try to unload at least one of the guys, and Kenny Clark was the man we think we'd start with. Again, we know that Kenny Clark has a big contract and there's going to be a big penalty, but the idea is that we want to begin to make some room for our younger players, and I think it might be worth it to do that. With the ideas of moving Devontae Wyatt, like we mentioned earlier, into the inside, we may be able to move Kenny away and improve our draft position or upgrade another area of the team with a trade. So we started to investigate trade options and found a partner in the Las Vegas Raiders who are offering the free safety Trayvon Merrick. Trayvon Merrick is a fun player to play with. I've played him with several franchises in the past, and I would be really excited to have him be a part of this Packer team. So we looked at that to see if it would work, and it would take us also swapping a few pick positions. They gave us about 3 picks. We sent maybe 2 or 3 picks. You'll see it on the screen there. And I think it makes sense a little bit for the Raiders as well. The Raiders represented the AFC in the Super Bowl, if you remember that, and we were able to run the ball pretty well against them. Kenny Clark may be a player that helps them deal with that part of their defense and put them over the top. Merrick was also beat pretty badly by Christian Watson in that game, and that may have put a sour taste in their mouth as well. So for us, Kenny Clark is a loss for us and a gain for the Raiders, but for us, we will have to eat that hefty cap penalty. I think it's over $20 million. Yikes. But it will make room again for some of our younger players to get developed. This trade will move Devontae Wyatt officially to the defensive tackle position, and will move Zach Bell, who is currently at the right outside linebacker position, to the right end, where we can kind of really put some speed on the defensive line. We think the cost is worth not letting the young talent rot on the bench. So welcome to the Packers, Trayvon Merrick. After the trade, we jumped into free agency in hopes of finding some of that offensive help we were talking about earlier. This year, Nick Chubb, Keenan Allen, and Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah were all looking for new teams, along with several other pretty big names. But we needed to check out the offensive line. As is the case in Madden, the O-line is pretty slim pickings. So we were looking through, trying to see what we needed. Luckily, we weren't really looking for starting positions except for the right tackle position, looking for backup positions. So we decided to start with the left tackle position and found Jedrick. Is it Jedrick? Maybe it's Jedrick Willis. And we offered a deal to bring him in as a backup. With his rating, he's a 78 rating. he may end up seeing some time at right tackle, depending on if we find something for there. But we'll take him in either way, as a backup or as a player that might have to fill in a starting role for a season or two. We're looking for lower cost players to provide some needed depth, so we tried to keep the contracts pretty low and didn't go after some of the higher profile players. Other players we offer contracts to were the right tackle Walker Little. We also offered to the right guard Royce Newman, offered to the center Ben Jones, and the left guard Kendrick Green. After a quick evaluation, we're able to sign all of these players with no further negotiation, and just like that, we had the O-line depth we've been looking for. Not the greatest roster of players, but a much-needed addition to the depth of our offensive line. So after we signed all of the offensive line, next up was deciding the fate of Eric Stokes. It really came down to this. Stokes is a fantastic player with a very high upside. He's fast, he's a great man cover, and has shown a lot of improvement since coming back from his injury in year one. But Deacon Bates is also a high upside corner who's going into his second year, and he already has the superstar X Factor trait and also offers a ton of potential. Both players offering a ton of potential for this team, but only one of these players will be able to hold down the slot position. Jair Alexander is holding that top spot. Don Robertson is going to hold the second spot. And so we need to decide which of these players is going to settle into that slot position, and then the other one pretty much has to go. We could make a case for keeping the depth at corner, and we mentioned earlier that the team is always dealing with injuries, so it might be really good to have either one of these players come off the bench and support this secondary and even as high as the top spot. But we like to try to upgrade the safety position, as we mentioned earlier, and it may be that we need to give up a solid player like Eric Stokes or Deacon Bates in order to do that. If we were to package one of these players with our current strong safety, for instance, like Kirby Joseph, we may have a chance to make a deal for a better type of player at that position. And so that's what I think we're going to try to do. We're going to go ahead and package Eric Stokes. Eric Stokes is the guy that we're going to look to move. We're going to keep Deacon Bates. Now, normally I would keep the faster corner, but this time the superstar X Factor and the younger, he's just a year, I think, younger, but the younger player is going to go ahead and stay. We're going to try to move Eric Stokes. So after a few phone calls we had with some other teams, we found someone interested or something interesting on the Lions roster with Brian Branch. Brian isn't as fast as we'd like. We want faster players typically, but on paper he has all the skills we want for our defense. A solid man coverage, solid zone, and a secure tackler with great pursuit against the run. We make the offer to the Lions, but they're not fans of the trade to start with. So after we added a few sweeteners, we're able to land a deal that moved Brian Branch, or rather that brought Brian Branch in for Eric Stokes, Kirby Joseph, and a slew of future draft pick considerations. So welcome to the green and gold, Brian Branch. It's another move that makes room for young players, specifically at the cornerback position this time, while improving an area of need. And so now the secondary looks pretty good. Jair, we've got Don Robinson, we've got Deacon Bates, we've got Trevon Merrick, and we've got Brian Branch. And we're a little loaded at the safety position because the free safeties, there's 3 of them, and we don't need all 3. Darnell Robertson, last year's starter, is not a fan of riding the bench behind Trevon Merrick and has requested to be released or traded. And so after looking at the offensive line, we thought maybe we can get better with a trade there. And after looking for a deal for right tackle and not finding one, we ended up in discussion with the Chicago Bears for right guard Tevin Jenkins, and we end up moving Darnell Savage and Royce Newman to Chicago for Tevin Jenkins to upgrade that position. And that ends the free agency for us, our activity in the free agency and the trade market, and settles us down for our team going into the draft. Here's a quick recap of how the free agency played out for some of the bigger names we saw in the list. We see Nick Chubb went to the Patriots. Talanoa Hufanga goes to the Patriots as well. They made a lot of noise in this particular draft. Keenan Allen went to the Titans, another team that makes a lot of noise. And Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah for the Colts also makes a lot of noise. So that division is going crazy over there. The Patriots, Titans, Colts, Texans division might be pretty wild this season. Speaking of the Texans, they get Teron Johnson. Tyrann Mathieu goes to Titans. Chidobe Awuzie goes to the Vikings, and Brandon Scherff goes to the Panthers. DeAndre Hopkins and Julian Love and Jared Goff all go to the Jets. Hopkins, Julian Love, and Goff all go to the Jets. Micah Hyde goes to the Colts. Brandon Cooks goes to the Colts. Khalil Mack goes to the Titans. So you see, it's all of those AFC. I mean, I said the wrong thing earlier. Those AFC teams, those Patriots, Titans, Colts, they are making all the moves. So with all the moves we've made, we're not really going into this draft with major needs. We can take a look at the talent and kind of take a best available approach for the most part for this draft. And as the Super Bowl winners, we have the last pick in the first round, and we're kind of fine with that because we don't really see any major move we have to make. We could probably go for a right tackle, but I don't think we have the assets to be able to move up too far in the draft to try to get the right tackle. So we're just going to kind of stay where we are and see what we get. That said, here are some of the prospects that did get our attention from the college day, or from the college pro day. So the first name we want to look at is the strong safety Jermaine Killings. Jermaine is a 6-foot safety out of Virginia and is exactly the kind of player we like. Honestly, he's a lot like Brian Branch. Brian Branch is the player we just traded for, and had we looked more closely at the board, we may not have needed to make that trade because Jermaine Killings looks just like that player, and we probably could have drafted him and maybe saved ourselves a little trade, or maybe gotten something different. He's not jumping off the charts athletically, but he has all the skills we're looking for. And it looks like he's not really making a lot of noise with the other teams. He's still there at 32. We looked at some of the previous mock drafts, and Jermaine Killings is not going in the first round. So if he's still at 32, we'll definitely consider him. Next up is the tight end Zach Redding. Since the first season began, we have been willing to add another solid tight end to free up Luke Musgraves. Musgraves is actually a very good tight end. He's one of the faster tight ends in the game. And I don't know why I just don't have good chemistry with him, but I'm fine with moving on from him. He was out the first season for the entire season with injury, and maybe that kind of ruined it for me with him. But he's a young player with great potential, and he feels like a player we could trade at a later date to get something different, and I'm willing to do that with him. Zach Redding has a really great combine, showed a lot of athleticism. He's the fastest tight end at the combine. Stands at 6'6" and wants to stretch the field, has soft hands, and we can definitely see drafting him in round 1 as well. Other names on our board: Lamar Hardin, a left outside linebacker out of Georgia, projected to go on day 3. Lamar seemed to have a pretty good pro day as well, and he has all the makings, all the indicators of a sleeper, as does Keon Newman. Keon Newman is another day 3 candidate on paper, but I think he looks amazing. He's got great skills. I actually have no idea why he's projected for day 3. He's a solid athlete with great skills in the air and on the ground, and he's definitely on our list of players to look to draft if he falls to us in the 3rd round. This year we don't have a 2nd round, so we got a 1st round and a 3rd. And Keon Newman would be a great addition. I think he's got a lot of value in that 3rd round. All right, so things got a little serious when the new offensive coordinator came into office with the latest mock draft that showed the Miami Dolphins taking Zach Redding. Miami Dolphins, taking Zach Redding 4 picks ahead of us. The good news is that Jermaine Killing still isn't on anyone's radar, so we could still consider him, but the bad news is if we want to get Redding, we were going to have to trade up. So after some deliberation, we decided that Killings was just too similar to Brian Branch to draft him. All offseason, we've been looking to free up space for young talent to grow, and this would be a step backwards in that regard. If we drafted Killings, one of them would have to ride the bench, Brian or Jermaine, and they're both too good to do that. They're both good enough to start. So we decided now is the time to try to trade up. So Miami obliged after relieving us of a slew of picks. So just to move up 4 spots, we gave away 5 picks. That's pretty expensive, so Redding better come in here and make a splash. And the draft is now underway. The Tampa Bay Bucks are going to start us off on the clock with the first pick of this 2025 draft. It's the Arizona Cardinals, actually the Texans. Not the Texans. The Tampa Bay Bucks go with Kevin Rose, quarterback out of Texas. The Texas Longhorn fans are hyped that their quarterback is going to go to number 1 to Tampa Bay. Very interesting to see what's going to happen with Tampa Bay with Kevin Rose at the helm. And now we got Frank Moulds, the first left end to go in this draft, goes to Arizona. This looks like it's going to be a draft where there is a ton of defensive players. We did get the quarterback first, but I'm curious what the counter is going to be for defensive players. There's another one, the right outside linebacker, J.D. Wallner from Alabama, going to Jacksonville. J.D. is a solid linebacker. There's another linebacker going off the board. Right now, 3 out of 4 teams have chosen defensive players. That's Dylan Underwood from Florida going to the New England Patriots. The Patriots made some splashes in the free agency, and they continue to make some splashes here in the draft. The second quarterback goes off the board to the Chicago Bears. Adrian Brayton out of Wisconsin will go and don the Bear uniform. I'm not sure if he's going to be the starting guy. I don't know if Justin Fields is still there or not, but we'll have to go and take a look. They're in our division, so I think we'll see him a lot. There's Mark Hancock, the first lineman to go off the board, the first offensive lineman coming out of Michigan, going to Denver from one cold state to the next as he moves on to his career. Denzel Blackburn, player that we looked at, is another defensive player, another linebacker going. It's a big linebacker class. We looked at him and thought about him, but figured he would go too early and we couldn't get him. Defensive tackle out of TCU is off the board. Andrew Starling, the first wide receiver off the board, goes to Seattle, going from the sunny terrain, I guess, of Florida up to the rainy Seattle area. Let's see if he can continue to be an impact when he gets started. There's a left end, Colorado State, Jamarcus Parrish going to the Houston Texans. They pick up Jamarcus, and to get him going, another defensive player. This time it's another defensive tackle, Al Scott. We looked at him as well. Didn't look at him on camera, but out of LSU, going to stick with the purple and yellow with Minnesota. And another linebacker, Deshaun Carrington, Iowa State. Yeah, we told you a lot of defensive players. There's Chris Simpson. I think this is the third wide receiver, maybe the second wide receiver. Chris Simpson is a very good prospect. We looked at him. We don't need the wide receiver, but I think he's probably going to be one of the better rated players. There's Chris Donald coming off the field, another wide receiver going to Auburn. So quarterbacks and receivers on the offensive side. And another Auburn player, Artie Dillard. Of course, we looked at all the Auburn players. And Cleveland is going to get Artie Dillard. Very curious to see if he's as good as I thought he was going to be. Jamal Valentine, a cornerback out of UCLA, going to the 49ers, and another right end, Lindsey Kirkland for Clemson. So I think we're probably, what pick are we? We are pick number 19. I bet we probably are
12-7 on defense to offense, maybe 12-8 now with I don't know, something like that. I bet we're near there. There's Caleb Holiday, the left tackle from the Penn State, going, oh, okay, here's some more of the offense is coming down. David Costa, a wide receiver, going to the Falcons. Walt Edwards, an offensive lineman, going to the San Diego Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers. Now, Mark Tucker, Oregon State, off the board. Carlos Hatchett, LSU, another linebacker, off the board. These right outside and left outside linebackers are just flying off the board in this first round. Reed Collins, right guard, off the board. Now we've got another offensive lineman, Michael Sullivan. He was on our board. He's off the board now to Michigan. Steve Donnelly, the third quarterback, is going to New Orleans. Going to see what he does. Will Derek Carr still be there, or will Steve Donnelly actually get a chance to play? What we don't see is the tight end that we've been targeting, and we don't see the strong safety Killings off the board yet. So we still have hope that we would get our guys. Javante Heron, wide receiver, he's off the board. Left tackle. All right, and so if Kansas City doesn't take either of those players, we'll have our pick to choose, and they choose the cornerback Paul Truman. And so now Green Bay, we are on the clock, and we have to decide what we're going to do. And we did make the big trade. We've traded a lot of picks and all of that to get up to draft Zach Redding. But I'm still deliberating about Jermaine Killings just because he seems like such a shoe-in of a prospect. It's really hard to pass on him, even though we definitely have a player that fits the mold. But I think we're going to go ahead and take Zach Redding. And there he is. He is a hidden depth trait. 90 acceleration, 82 agility, 87 speed. So he's not quite as fast as Musgraves, but maybe he gets there if he does some work, does some training, and as he progresses, he could maybe get a little faster. But we're happy with this. Zach Redding, the number 1 draft pick for the Green Bay Packers, for the Super Bowl champ Green Bay Packers. We're excited for that, and happy to bring him into the fold. The Cowboys follow us with a lineman pick. The Raiders are on the board. They're going to go with another defensive lineman out of Texas A&M. And the Miami Dolphins, they get Jermaine Killings. And that's probably a steal for them as the last pick. Whoever got him, it was a steal, because I think I'll bet he's a top 5 or top 10 overall player in this draft. Well, that was the first round. It went by pretty quickly, and we're just going to advance to our next pick, which is the third round. And in this round, we're looking at that linebacker. I think it's Keon Newman. He's definitely the guy, although Lamar Harden doesn't look bad either. But Keon Hartman, man. And there he is. He's a hidden depth trait, 90 speed, love it. Middle linebacker, 88 acceleration. Love this guy right here, man. Look at that impact. Oh, not impact blocking. B man coverage, A zone coverage, B block shed. I don't know how he is in the third round, but he should at least be a second round pick. And we're at the end of the third round, and we're able to get him. That is a gift to us, 100%. Player out of Oklahoma, Keon Newman. Welcome to the Packers. Next pick for us is going to be in the fourth round. It's the end of the fourth round. Oh, actually, this is pick number 23 in the fourth round. We're going to look at the quarterback here, Robbie Phibbs. What I was thinking here is that we might want to trade the Jacoby Brissett. He's got a big contract. He's a backup for us. I thought, man, if we can get a quarterback late and maybe bring him up, maybe we could release him or trade him. He's got 93 power, Robbie Phibbs, and so he needs to be able to throw the deep ball. That's what's really important. He's got B for deep accuracy. He's a in-the-pocket passer, not very mobile at all, needs to stand still to throw the ball. He's going to be a project for us to see if we can get him up to speed. But if we can, then that'll release us from Jacoby Brissett, I think, and maybe he'll be the guy that will back up Jordan Love. Okay, now we're in the 5th round. Lamar Harden is still there. He's not the best player. He's got that 86 speed, though, which we like, and he's got 84 acceleration. He's going to be a fixer-upper, but we'll see if we can get him going. So Lamar Harden out of Georgia, left outside linebacker. Welcome to the Packers. Now this is our last pick, and we're going to go ahead and pick a punter, I'm pretty sure. And that is going to do it, ladies and gentlemen, for the 2025 draft for the Green Bay Packers. We do get a couple players that we were really interested in. It wasn't supposed to be a big splash draft for us, but still something that we can use. I think Zach Redding is going to be a big deal for us. He's a 74 overall, so not too bad. Keon Newman, a 73. That's a great value pick in the 3rd round. 73 overall for Keon Newman, and Phibbs is 67 as a quarterback. Lamar Harden, 64. It's not very good. He was not a steal. I thought maybe he would be a steal, but he wasn't a steal. Maybe he'll progress pretty quickly. We'll see. But I think he came in as a normal dev, and we're going to have to either work with him or drop him. We'll see what happens with Lamar Harden. I'm very interested to see what Billing Killings is, and he was a 76 overall, 88 speed. He is a hidden dev trait, and his rating 78, 77, 76. Yeah, you know, it turns out the player that we have is a lot better, although he's got a year under his belt, I think. Brian, the player we drafted from Detroit, he is probably a little bit better, but I mean, if Jermaine Killings is a superstar or a superstar X Factor, and he could be, then he may turn out to be better after 1 year. Miami, huge draft class this time, but only a couple players over 70. He's got Miles Beach and Jermaine Killings are the ones that are really making the difference for that team. You saw Kevin Rose. Just wanted to see who is the best players in the draft, and Kansas City gets one of the best players in Paul Truman, the cornerback. They picked him late. They picked him right before us, I believe, and they got them something. Simpson with the 49ers. Valentine, I can't remember where he went. There's Killings. He's the 6th best player, and that's what I thought. He'd be a top 10. But I don't know. Could be a player that really comes through. We'll have to see. So I think that will do it for this offseason. Hopefully you're excited about the next season. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. This is Pastor's Game 2. God loves you and so do I. And I will see you when I see you. Peace.